If you love scary stories, you're in the right place. I used to work at a small sleepaway camp as a counselor. It was my first job when I was 17. It was the most fun I could have at any job at that age. Plus, it got me away from my parents' house for a month. I didn't exactly come from an enviable background. At this camp, there were 5 buildings. The boys' dorms, the girls' dorms, the counselors' dorms, the main hall, which we called the shack, and a small bathroom building. Inside the shack was the cafeteria, the main office, and the nurses' quarters, where any kids who suffered injuries would be brought. The kids' curfew was 9 p.m. Curfew only meant they weren't allowed outside the dorm buildings after that time. I became good friends with a guy named Johnny. He was 3 years older than me, but we got along well. It was a Friday night. I remember because it was the start of the weekend. For fun, Johnny and I went to hang out with 2 girl counselors, whose names I'll leave out for privacy since I haven't seen them in many years. The 4 of us went out into the woods to smoke. One of the girls was in the middle of a sentence when we all heard it, a crunch of leaves nearby. It was unmistakably a footstep. All of our heads turned in the same direction at the same time. A few seconds later, there was a blinding flash. At first, we didn't understand what it was, but it unnerved all of us. We immediately cut the smoke session short and exited the woods at a very quick pace. Being back on the campgrounds felt much safer, but we became paranoid that one of the camp supervisors had been watching us and that the flash had been a camera taking our picture. We would surely get fired if we were caught smoking weed. In a panic, we all rushed back to our respective dorm buildings. The thing about me when I smoke weed is that I become extremely paranoid and overthink everything. As I sat in my bed, the thought kept eating away at me. Was it really a camera flash? Who took that picture? I couldn't take it anymore. I had to go to the shack and see if any supervisors were still working so I could come clean. Every counselor had a key to the building, so I unlocked the cafeteria entrance and stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me. The building was dark and empty. The only light came from the hallway leading to the main office, where I hoped someone might still be working. You might think I was crazy for doing this, but I really couldn't afford to lose that job over something that wasn't even my idea. I figured I could feel out whichever supervisor was on duty and find out whether they had actually seen us. As I walked down the hallway toward the office, I quickly realized the office lights were off. No one was there. Then I heard the familiar sound of the cafeteria door slamming shut again. Had someone seen me enter? Was I being followed? I hid behind the corner of an intersecting hallway wall and peeked around it, waiting to see who would walk into view. No one ever did. But it took me longer than it should have to notice something peeking around the cafeteria doorway. It was a person's head. They were doing exactly what I was doing, peering in my direction. The moment I realized this, I didn't care about being quiet anymore. I ran as fast as I could to the nearest exit, my feet pounding against the wooden floors. I sprinted to the counselor's dorm. Only 3 counselors were still hanging out in the common area, one of them being Johnny. I told only him about what I had just witnessed. I didn't know what to think other than that I was being followed. I think Johnny could tell I was a little extra paranoid because I was high, so he told me to go to my room and lock the door. He made sure to lock the main entrance to the building as well. Honestly, I think I scared him too. That night, I lay awake, nervous and confused. There were so many unanswered questions. The beds in every counselor's room sat right next to a window without blinds, so moonlight usually poured in on clear nights. But this wasn't a clear night. It was cloudy. The room was completely dark. Then, after hours of lying awake, A sudden flash filled my room. Lightning? No. There was no thunder. No rain. I looked toward the window. All I could see was a silhouette standing outside. When they noticed me noticing them, they slowly raised a hand and waved. That was the final straw. I ran out of my room screaming for Johnny. By then, he had already gone to bed. I pounded on his door until he opened it. I told him the man who had been following me was outside my window. Johnny went to check with me, but whoever it was had already disappeared. He asked me if I was still high. I told him absolutely not. It had been hours. I asked if we should call the police. He said no. Instead, he told me to bring my blankets and sleep on the floor in his room if it made me feel safer. Low-key, I think he wanted me there because he was scared too. I never understood why he pretended not to take the situation seriously. He had seen the flash in the woods just like I had. I did sleep in his room that night. I didn't want to be alone. I was too terrified. The next day, I went to the main office and spoke with one of the supervisors. She didn't really know what to do. She didn't call the police, but she gave me permission to call them myself if anything else happened, for the safety of the children. But nothing happened again. Not until the last day of the job. By then, all the kids had already gone home, and it was the day the counselors were supposed to pack up and leave. I woke up and found 4 photographs taped to my window. The first was a zoomed-in picture of me standing in the woods that night, with Johnny and the 2 girls. The second was a picture of me sleeping in my bed. The third showed me entering the shack the night we had smoked, confirming that I had indeed been watched and followed. The fourth was a close-up photograph of my license plate number. I immediately took the photos and showed them to the same supervisor. She kept them as evidence after writing down my entire statement, including the part about smoking weed. This happened many years ago now, and nothing ever came of it. But I was terrified that the picture of my license plate was some kind of threat, that whoever had been following me intended to track me down. To this day, I still don't know who took those pictures.